Bit by bit, one drop at a time, women's ice hockey continues to get stronger. Better coaches, better young players, progress. There was a thought coming out of Vancouver 2010 that the sport could be in trouble in terms of being an Olympic sport.
Well, as you may or may not remember, in the wake of the very successful Vancouver Olympics, IOC President Jacques Roga made a rather controversial pronouncement. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the women's tournament was too much of a two-team tournament. And that had to change, and if it didn't, then the IOC would perhaps have to reassess whether or not women's hockey should be an Olympic sport. A pretty contentious statement when you look back on it, and you wonder, if you're a player or a coach, how are you supposed to react to that?
That when I heard it, I was like, you know, it's just another one of those things. I mean, later on when I sat back and thought about it and we started to work on the Hockey Summit and this type of project, you know, you realize that it was a push towards countries that have great male teams that don't have any infrastructure for their female hockey players, and it was a wake-up call for everybody, you know, from the IIHF right down into the federations to wake up and make sure that we're doing the right thing so the sport is growing, because we really weren't.
Rogue said, basically, get it together. Let's get going. Let's do something about it. Too many people, it's our game, so too many people were sitting back and saying, okay, this is the way it is. We're in the Olympics now. We're satisfied. Let's just keep going. We became complacent. We couldn't be. So we had to say, all right, we needed that as a push. Let's get going.
In the wake of that challenge, the IIHF responded by, among other things, establishing the Athlete Ambassador and Mentor Program, where coaches and players, current and past, from the major hockey women's nations, work with the developing programs to try to help close the competitive gap.
Oh, I think under obviously Mel Davidson's leadership and Tanya Foley, who was at the start of the program, I think there was a recognition that there was too large of a gap, not necessarily even between, you know, the North American countries, but the rest of the world. And it's been evident over the last year or two that that gap is closing, maybe not up to 1 and 2, but certainly nations 3 through 15 are exchanging wins at different tournaments.
So, you know, he wants to challenge us, that's fine, because now we've come up with different programs internationally, and there's a bigger spotlight on the developing countries now. It's not all just Canada, US. It's about, okay, well, let's get this game better because we know it's a good sport. So I think at the end of the day, it was probably one of the best things that could have happened for women's hockey.
Where you especially see things starting to work is with the next generation of players, like those at the recent Under-18 High Performance Camp in Sheffield, Great Britain.
Okay, line up along the blue line, right? Line up along the blue line. You know, before, if you came to an event like this at the Under-18, this camp, you would end up seeing maybe 1 or 2 really good players, and then everybody else just learning and developing.
It's night and day difference. You know, kids now are all over the world, they're starting to play young, and they're growing up wanting to be hockey players. You know, we take that for granted in North America.
Finding your player? Bang, good. Always looking. I like it.
So we're seeing it around the world now that these kids are sharing the same dreams and you know, attempting to work as hard. They work as hard, but don't necessarily have the same tool set yet. But the desire is there, and to me, that's the biggest ingredient.
But don't kid yourself. There is still a fairly massive disparity between nations 1 and 2, and the drop down to 3, and so on. And that's not going to change in Sochi. However, you do have to continue to give it time, another couple of Olympic cycles at least.
It has gotten closer. The gap has gotten smaller, yeah. But there's like it's obvious that the Canada and US are still very much ahead of everybody, but we're getting there, yeah.
I think it's support, because a lot of girls play and then they hit the age of 25, 26, and they have to have a job. They're not in school anymore, and they have to decide, do I give my money to hockey or do I buy myself an apartment? So I think the biggest thing is giving more support to the girls so they can play and they don't have to pay as much to play. So I mean, if we do that and we get a little more money in the game, I think we'll be good.
The glass is filling up, Maybe it's not half full quite yet, but it is certainly not half empty. Reporting for IIHF.com, I'm Paul Romanuk.